What's up, my fellow scruffy looking nerf herders, and welcome to the Carbonite Chat. I said after my video yesterday where I broke down Captain Marvel the movie, I held off on anything for the most part, not discussing stuff such as anything feminist or any of maybe the political things that were kind of thrown in there. I thought it was a bad enough movie that I could break it down without that, but I also felt that this needed to be broken down as a whole because I've seen a lot of people that I would have imagined would kind of pick out some of the political stuff have said they didn't see much that was really to worry about with the political stuff. And I kind of see that almost opposite. Some of these, I almost see it worse in some sense, especially on the feminist side of it, than a lot of people had issues with The Last Jedi. But, which The Last Jedi is worse than Captain Marvel, just to put my opinion out on that one if you haven't seen any of my videos and don't realize how much I hate that movie. But I want to break down exactly why I believe this is just a gross, just overdone bit of feminist propaganda. Now, before you just shut it off and think this is absurd, you're leaping to things and all of this, I want to show how there's points in it that is very subtle. But ultimately, the kind of allegory and the true story of Captain Marvel is men are bad, women are great. And basically that women are ready to step up and destroy the patriarchy. That's what this movie is about. And now I'll start with some of the more obvious things and slowly work my way through to try to prove my point of why this is true. Because sometimes when you play something that it's allegorical or it's, kind of a subtle subtext of a story, then you can say, well, that's just the way you view it. But I think by going through each little piece in a specific little order where you slowly begin to see the things open up to you and see each little minor thing, the obvious things, and then the more subtle things, and then all of that piecing together begins to bring to what the ultimate subtext and the meaning of this movie. I mean, Brie Larson said she wanted to make a feminist movie. She's a very outspoken feminist. And then same with the directors. They said this was their goal. They wanted to make this. They're trying to act like it's the first female empowerment movie ever. And that's just absurd. And I won't go through all of the movies that have already had incredibly strong female characters. But it's just a stupid comment. And it's kind of funny. And it shows just how insane a lot of the feminists are now, where they just can't accept the fact of what all has been accomplished beforehand, what's been done by people before. They've got to be the new people, and it's just pathetic. But first, let's start with the obvious here. Now, the biggest thing that's the obvious one is kind of the first little montage she has when the Skrull are going through her brain. Now, the first thing you see is her and Maria, and they come up, and Maria, they say, let's show these boys how it's done. Which, as I said in my review before, by itself is perfectly fine. I have no issue with that at all. But when you kind of connect it with everything else that comes after it, then you start to see that, oh, okay, this is just kind of showing their cards a little bit of how they kind of feel. Let's show these men we're better than them, because that's what you get throughout the rest of the movie. But the next point is the father. And the father, of course, is just the worst father in history of time. He either let her go out and race or she snuck out there by herself anyways, but she wrecked, she's bleeding. Serious, it's a serious incident. Any legitimate father would be worried about her being okay. They wouldn't immediately go out there and start yelling at them about, you shouldn't be out there, you don't belong out there. It's just insane. And to kind of connect again, men bad, women good, a lot of these characters have the reverse side of it. So you have the father who's terrible. Well, what else do we have? We have the mother, Maria, who's a great mom. There's no father in there. It's just the mother, and she's perfectly raised up her daughter, and her daughter's just so good. I mean, Captain Marvel takes a moment to say, like, wow, your mom lucked out having you. But we all know it's how the mother raised her, and then there's that moment where Maria's trying to decide whether or not to go up to space and be the co-pilot. And the daughter says, hey, you should consider, the example you're setting for me. And I broke down before how stupid I think that is in the other video. But my point here is that you're showing that they're contrasting different things. And the next one you have is a similar contrast. You kind of have two clips that fit together. First being the soldiers, where she's hanging there, they're laughing and mocking at her and the possibility that she may die. And you flip that again, you can do it with Maria, where she was worried. She couldn't, the worst part for her was the fact that she knew she was going to keep fighting and how she was close to death and all alone. And to separate it out even further, you got another guy that makes a stupid cockpit joke that's just as dumb as can be. But when you look at the men at war, they're all relatively bad. I mean, if nothing else, they're definitely nowhere near the women in the movie. And ultimately, that's just Captain Marvel and Maria. But both of them are played off as perfect. There's no scars left on them for what they've done in this war. I mean, Captain Marvel was on the wrong side. But ultimately, she didn't really do anything leading up to that point that really makes it that she can't come back from her. There's some big thing to really have remorse. The only thing she has remorse for is the men, the other male soldiers, the Kree. Her mentor, Jude Law's character, told her all these lies and lied to her about absolutely everything. So again, of course, he's the evil guy, the bad guy. The only one that slightly makes it out is Sam Jackson, which if this is feminist propaganda, there's intersectional feminism, which is what they are, which then would equate that black men are stepped above white men, which is why he got away a little bit better than anyone else, because really the only thing you had is he didn't really do that much to help out. But she did be like, hey, give me that communicator because you screwed up and called people and you don't deserve having the abilities. Let me have control because the women need to run things. The only other one, of course, is Ben Mendelsohn's character, Talos. But even he, when he's the closest to being, good, portrayed well in this, he's kind of a allegory for Islam and, Muslim refugees. And how the patriarchy or the Kree and white men that are trying to protect the borders and hunt down these people, they see it as, he's a terrorist, but he's not. He just wants to get to his family. He just wants to find a home. But even he said that he's got war wrapped all up. Like when Brie was worried and apologizing, he said, I'm thick in it as well. So by his own admittance, more than anything else, he's not quite to the level of Brie and Maria. So there's another kind of contrasting things, the male soldiers versus the female soldiers. You also have the fact that Marvel is the only Kree that turned and decided to do positive instead of trying to, further the war like all the other Kree. She's trying to end the war, and she realizes and she's trying to help out those who are in need of it. Again, that's a bit of intersectional feminism, where you have this weird thing now where the feminists of today, third wave, intersectional, whatever you want to call it, have made this strong connection with Islam. And you see this going on here in this movie, kind of touching on it a little bit here and there. To throw another contrasting thing in between there, again, to throw out this men bad, women good, is the very obvious, stupid scene of Just a Girl playing, I'm Just a Girl, or whatever it is, that No Doubt song at the end, with Brie Larson and Captain Marvel running around going crazy and just destroying all the guys, of course, easily, with absolutely no problem. And yes, I realize there's one female character in Star Force, but one character does not change the storyline. You can't be so blatantly obvious. But with the Just a Girl thing, that's contrasted. You have the Brie Larson superhero, got all her powers, going to destroy everybody, just the ultimate protector of all things at this point. Versus earlier in the movie, where you go and she crashes down into Blockbuster, and ironically enough, if you paid a little bit of attention, crashed down into Blockbuster, she goes outside and there's a security guard in a beat up car. It's a fat guy, supposedly, it's supposed to look like a slob with a, not a great job in a crappy car. And she goes to try to get help from him, and he rolls down the window and is playing What a Man, What a Man, What a Man. These are the contrasting songs that are very distinctly pointing out the opinion and views that the director and the writers have of each side. So, see, we're beginning to roll in and put together and piece together what this movie is actually about. One last little contrast in this, and a lot of people may try to point this one as well, is they might say, well, the supreme intelligence of the Kree, if they're an example of the patriarchy, which they are, I think I might have forgot to mention that they are the versions of the patriarchy that Brie Larson's supposed to destroy. It's the Supreme Intelligence is a woman. Well, there you go. First off, ironically, changed from a man in the comics to a woman. But in that, the Supreme Intelligence is a female. You only see who her mentor is. It's a little trick they're playing to try to sneak away and kind of make it where it seems like, well, obviously, the creed can't be patriarchy or just all men are bad kind of thing, because look, it's a woman. But that's just how the mentor, she just sees her mentor. She didn't even know who it was at the time. And if you look at who her actual mentor is that we watch and see, you've got two versions. Let's see how Lawson is. Lawson was somebody that was with her, giving her the only ability to be able to fly, because the men of the army that we saw before in the flashback are mocking her and saying she'll never be able to fly. But Lawson, on the other hand, gives her a chance to fly. Lets her fly her planes that she's creating and testing out herself. Brings her on the only trip that she goes on to be able to try to rescue people. She sacrifices her life. She's the only creed that can see what's really right or wrong and tries to help people and ends up sacrificing and giving up her life in that instance. Versus Jude Law, the Cree mentor that you see that she actually experiences most of her time as a true mentor at the beginning of the movie. He's telling her that she's too emotional. She needs to work on her skills. She has too much doubt. She's vulnerable. She needs help. He's always got to kind of be with her. There's, when she says, I can go it alone. He's like, no, you're not ready to go it alone. And then, of course, it turns out that he kidnapped her. He killed Lawson. And he's been lying to her this whole time to try to trick her into doing what he wanted to do. So, again, these contrasts go just on and on. It's told throughout the whole story. The movie itself, in the way that most people would see the story or the ideas of it, are not subtle in the slightest. I covered that before. The only things that are subtle and kind of neatly woven into the story, and that's why I'm saying it's the actual meaning that the writers were trying to put across, is the feminism side of it and the men bad, women good. A lot of things in this movie make no sense unless you understand and grasp that. It makes no sense, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Now, as you're beginning to see that clearly there's some things in here that may not be so quickly noticed at first, let's pick out some of the little maybe nitpicky things to kind of build up my defense of my argument here. First off, little things like when she landed in the Blockbuster. There's a picture of a poster of the true crime. She shoots Arnold Schwarzenegger's head off. Does nothing to Jamie Lee Curtis. Just an interesting little thing there. See, this is third wave feminism at its finest. It's not that equality that we're going for, that they say they want. It's actually man-hating. They'll deny it left and right, but when you put stuff like this together, movies like this, and you really hear them talk, their first reaction is anti-men, and then they try to cover it up later. We saw a lot of this with some of Brie Larson's talking points at the, as she was leading up in through this movie. I mean, there's stuff in here that only makes sense to even begin to think of putting this in a movie if you're a third wave feminist. And that's the stupid thing where the motorcycle guy pulls up and does a smile for me comment. We saw this in the Gillette commercial before. That was obviously hated. We had this because of the comments that were made to Brie Larson beforehand. This is one of those things that third wave feminism tries to say is such an issue for all women. That men just think that they just need to smile. And so that was put in there. And then another one that it makes no sense. No one ever in history prior to third wave feminism forcing this idea in their head would find this as a negative thing. But Talos says, young lady to Maria, and she freaks out. She's like, don't you ever call me that again. If you do, I'm going to put a boot so far up something. How can young lady be disrespectful? And I know there's some feminists that are coming up with all the reasons that they were told in their gender studies class that that's offensive. It's not. If someone calls me young man, I don't care. It's not offensive. It's actually a form of respect. He didn't know her name. He didn't know anything about her. That's just a natural thing, young lady, I'm sorry. He's an alien. He's an older man. That's natural for him. He didn't call her little girl, which maybe could, I get it, that might be disrespectful. But she acted like he was calling her the C word or the B word. Like, give me a break. This is only done with third wave feminism. And finally, something that would be fine. I don't have an issue with it if it wasn't for the rest of the movie. I still don't have an issue with it. I just find it funny because it's clearly a third wave feminist type thing. And that was the pushing of women into STEM programs. Just a little comment, nothing big. But again, I'm building out my argument and showing that it's in every little point of the script and every little point of the movie. And that's at the very end. We've already seen Captain Marvel is better than every man has ever been alive. She's just the best ever, period. And then they're down there, and so Sam Jackson's like, yeah, I mean, you know, maybe one day you can fly like that up into space. And the daughter goes, or maybe I'll build a ship that'll go up there. She's like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, it's very clearly a STEM thing, which if you don't know it's STEM, it's for this part, it's engineering, which third wave feminists say that there's not enough females in STEM programs. They ignore a lot of other data that shows why that might be the case, and it's not because of sexism that they always try to say it is. But this, again, is just a feminist talking point, and that is, again, just one of the issues. So now the patriarchy idea and concept, as I've pointed out all these other things, I'll begin to kind of point out where this allegory comes from and where that's kind of in the subtext of the movie, of the patriarchy. Largely, well, basically, it's the Kree. The Kree are the patriarchy. The Kree, mainly led by Jude Law, is kind of a version of feminist worst nightmare, which is Western white men. So largely, you can kind of play it into like America as a whole. But mostly for white men, because again, this is intersectional feminism. And you get that because you see the Kree, the leader being a white male, the face of it being a white male. Everyone else is subordinate to him. And he's obviously clearly trying to hold down Brie Larson throughout the thing. You have it where it starts out and they're going to protect the borders from the immigrants that are getting too close to their borders. They're kind of the police of the universe going around, which, you know, you can see that as the U.S. a lot of time polices different things, specifically in the Middle East, which is kind of playing in that refugee thing, and they're just trying to find a home and they're not terrorists. So now I put down that this is kind of explaining how they're supposed to be an example of the patriarchy. Now we see different things to how feminists view the patriarchy, holding them down, because that's what this is about. Brie Larson at the end is breaking free of the patriarchy. The end makes no sense if you don't view it in this way. The end is the Supreme Intelligence begins to tell her that she ultimately, she's weak. She's helpless. She can't do it on her own. She's just a human. Now, where does this come from? She hasn't had this, there's no connection between this being a struggle. She's clearly not weak. She's beat up everyone. Even before she had her hand powers, she beat up 20 of Talos's best men. Yeah, she hasn't quite been able to beat Jude Law's character, but this is all just talking points of what, you know, feminists believe men view them and how the patriarchy holds them down. We tell them they're weak. We tell them they're slow. We tell them they're helpless without us. And so what happens, she starts to stand up, and you're supposed to connect that with earlier in the movie where Sam Jackson, or Fury, begins to tell her that, oh, Agent Coulson went against the orders. He just went with his gut, and, you know, that's just something, you know, human. And I pointed out how that makes no sense in the context of the story. It makes no sense for him to say this, but she says, yeah, that sounds like me. So that's her all the time. So this isn't some moment of realizing that she has something in her that she didn't have before. And it's proven even more so when she's flashing back through this as she's about to get up, that every point in her life that we've seen already, she gets up. She's always gotten up. She's never been weak. She's never been helpless. And That makes no sense as far as a climactic moment of a movie, which is supposed to be where the character finally makes the decision at the end of the movie to change who she was at the beginning. But if you watch the very beginning of the movie, she was getting up every time she was knocked down. The first thing you see is her hit the ground and she gets up. See, this is why this is actually what the movie's about. It's the first thing they show you in the last part of the climax. And then the finale is just a celebration of that climax, which is where you see her destroy everybody, no problem, no issue. It's not even close. There is zero conflict in the end. She destroys everyone outright of the Star Force. And then she immediately goes off and destroys Ronan. Or not destroys Ronan, but just a little fist bump. He floats away. And then she just shoots off Jude Law and sends him away. He was nothing to her. So the movie's trying to show you the first thing you see in the climactic ending moment. The point where the emotional climax happens. And that's her standing and rising. And that's also the first thing she did. There was no change in between this. And that's something we'll get to a little bit later. But this is where all it's trying to say is women are always great. All women are perfect and amazing. And see, don't take this as I'm going against women, because I'm not. This is just terrible writing, and I'm pointing that out. Before someone tries to say something stupid, I'll make that one caveat before I continue to move on. I'm not saying Brie Larson's terrible, or Captain Marvel's terrible. I'm saying the script's terrible and their ideas are dumb, but if you look at it, all this is showing that, man, she was always great. We see that she's always great. They keep telling her that she's overly emotional, but we never see her being overly emotional. We never see her emotions getting in the way of her doing something. They keep telling her she has doubt, but you never see doubt seep into some of her actions and cause her to fail in something. I brought up a lot of further examples in my video before where I broke down the movie without feminism. But it's never there. These are all talking points of what feminism says the patriarchy does to hold them down. Talos before says you had two hands tied up and you beat everybody. Now she says, I've had one hand tied behind my back this whole time. Now let's see what I can really do. And then the little thing on the back of her neck falls off. It's her breaking free of the patriarchy. The patriarchy, again the Cree, is what put that on her to hold her down. Then can continually tell her that she's confused, that she's not sure of herself, that she's too emotional, that she's not ready, that they gave her the power. Even the power she has now, which is actually holding her back, they gave it to her. This is all feminism, that the patriarchy tries to make it seem like we give women everything, but we're actually holding them back completely. That's the only way this ending makes any sense, because it makes no sense as far as an actual character arc. Because there is no character arc in this movie. This story is nothing more than a story of men bad, women good, and women overcoming and destroying the patriarchy. That's what that whole climactic scene is. Nothing but that. That's why when she breaks free, she no longer even, there's just no care. You have the only one that even knocks her back a little bit actually is the girl. And then when she's fighting, she ends up on the ground. A guy gets over the top with her head, and he's like, don't make me do it. And she laughs about it. It's funny to her because men are nothing now. Now that women understand that they're better than men, that's no threat. Same with later when Jude Law's like, okay, I'm proud of you. Let's do it. Let's fight for real. Let's do it. And then she just throws him off the knife. I have nothing to prove to you. This is all the steps that they're wanting. This is what they're wanting the girls that are watching this and women to try to become. To forget men, erase them. We don't need them. We've got this all our own. So why is this such a big a deal? Over the obviousness of clear sexism on their part, it's terrible for girls growing up. And it's terrible for just basic screenwriting or storytelling. If this was a guy in a similar situation, if somebody made some movie like this that was the man version of it, it would still be just as bad. This is a problem for young girls that are beginning to see these movies that are being made that are no longer like Princess Leia or Ridley from Aliens or The Bride from Kill Bill, even though I don't know if that's really something to show a kid growing up. But the point is, before, these women had to struggle. So girls watching this would learn that their strength isn't some made-up strength, that they're just stronger than everybody to begin with. Because that's a lie. If you haven't gone through struggles and you haven't put in this work, then you're not going to be stronger than other people. And yeah, sure, you can say that Brie Larson put in work beforehand. We see her at the very beginning, like kind of fighting with and training. But the point is, as the movie goes on, you don't really see this. She's just all powerful. And any of the struggles that she has, she just is given more power in the moment to beat the enemy. She doesn't have to learn anything. She doesn't have to improve. And this is a problem when you're showing anyone. Girls, because I say girls because that's what they were trying to make this movie for, is a feminist crap, is you're hurting them in the long run. It's bad for them. It's bad if you try to show them that, teach them subtly through subtext that men are bad and men are lying to you and men are trying to hold you down. So don't listen to what they're saying. If someone's against you and someone's telling you you need to improve on something and it's a man, ignore them. They're probably trying to hold you down. No, maybe they need to learn and improve on something. We all need to learn and improve on something. And when you show these people this, that becomes a huge ordeal. It becomes a huge problem. Everyone goes through struggles. Everyone gets stronger because they deal with their weaknesses. When you break a bone, the bone comes back thicker and stronger the next time. You've got to go through that struggle. That's part of the story. That's part of what connects us with people. And that's why some of these new female characters that are played up this way, like Rey and like Captain Marvel here, are so disliked. And why we're called sexist for not liking them. But a lot of men love the Alita thing. The Alita movie that came out. It was the popular critics that kind of panned it, but it was the guys on YouTube that hated The Last Jedi and hate Captain Marvel that were praising it and saying, go watch this movie. It's amazing. Because she went through some struggles and she was 1,000 times stronger and more well-defined character that if I had a daughter, I would every day of the week show her Alita over Captain Marvel. Because it's a great example of a person, boy or girl, is going to face struggle and hardships, and she's going to have to fight through it. And showing them fight through it, even if it's like Alita in the middle of the movie where she has her lower body cut off, one arm ripped off, and she's clawing with one hand to continue to fight. That's powerful. That's a strong character. Captain Marvel is not. I don't care if you can grab 20 missiles shooting down at you and you can throw them back up. You're nowhere near Alita. You're nowhere. It's so meaningless of a character. And that's where it comes to this whole big, awful word that everybody's trying to fight over and complain about people using. And they're saying it's just sexist when it's not. And that's the Mary Sue word. Is Captain Marvel Mary Sue? 100%. They almost need to change the name to Captain Marvel. I mean, if you look at the definition of what a Mary Sue is, it's an idealized, seemingly perfect character. Now, I've pointed out throughout this whole video that is idealized feminism. That it is woven through this whole thing. That the actual subtext of the entire movie is feminist, women great, men bad, destroying the patriarchy. And what is the climax of the movie? What is the true thing that's happening here? Now, what is her flaws? What issues do we have? She doesn't have any. We're told she has emotional issues, that she struggles with her emotion, but we never see that actually played out for real. Not once. And the only time she ever has a slight struggle in a fight, she ends up immediately like getting more powers. She's got her hands tied up. She runs up to one guy that she can't just beat up with her hands, and then boom, immediately it actually will fire off and knock him away. Later on, she beats all the Star Force immediately. She gets caught because they take the thing off of her neck. But instead of having to learn anything from it, she just remembers that she's always gotten up before, and that drops the thing off, and now she's more powerful than she ever was before. She didn't learn anything there. She just remembered she was always powerful and always got up, and that made it fall off. I guess. And then later on, she for a second can't immediately break into the glass and destroy Jude Law. So she falls down and then she learns how to fly immediately and just starts destroying everybody. This is where the seemingly perfect thing is. She has no issues. She never has to learn from anything. She doesn't have to, okay, I can't use my hands to fight right now. So she has to outthink someone or do something, different, outsmart, anything. There's never a point she has to learn or improve or grow. And she has no flaws that she improves on. She's just seemingly perfect throughout the entire movie. Clearly, there's some ideology. And now, finally, because the writers are obviously trying to push this ideology in, and their goal is to prove that women are better, the second half of the definition of a Mary Sue is it's an author insert or wish fulfillment. This is 100% a wish fulfillment of feminists. That they're all actually perfect and there's no issues with them at all, that they don't struggle. The only struggles they have is just men telling them that they're struggling and that they have issues. But deep down, they have none. And if finally freed, if finally believing that they can get up and that they're better than everyone, and the thing holding them down from the patriarchy is released, they will do more than any man has ever been able to do. And we see that quite clearly. She had a lot of snarky comments, very much like Tony Stark, where we quickly see the difference between a man who clearly is very flawed from his character to begin with, but even in his ability to learn skills, there's a stark difference. Remember the contrast I said before inside this movie, where there's a distinct contrast in her and Iron Man. Ironically, Iron Man, the first kind of kickoff, yeah, there was Incredible Hulk, but really the first kind of male, white male from America that kicked off the whole thing. And then you have Captain Marvel. Now, where's this stuff? They get their powers. Iron Man creates his own, again, from a very serious struggle that he was going through, and actually spends the time in prison building something and learning from his mistakes and changing the way that he was going to live his life from that point on. Again, character arcs and building up someone, growth as a person, these basic tenets of storytelling. But when he's trying to learn how to fly, he crashes down, he flies up through the ceiling, crashes down on the car. I mean, there's a montage of him trying to learn how to use this suit that he made. He spent the time making it. He's still struggling with how to be able to get it to work. Captain Marvel falls and then closes her eyes and then boom, she can fly better than anyone else. Boom, perfect, immediately. Now, the next part is you have them fighting the missiles. So you have a missile shot by, I believe, someone else on Earth to destroy New York because of the Chitauri attack happening. It's flying this way, horizontally, and then Iron Man gets up under it and tries to forcefully push it, and he is struggling to push that one missile that's not even advanced tech like what Ronan would have, and the Accusers. And he barely is able to force it up and get it up. That's the climax of the Avengers, the buildup of a bunch of movies. But nope. What does Captain Marvel do? There's 20 of them shooting directly down. And she fairly easily catches that thing, just turns around and blows up 20 more of them. To the point that Ronan runs away because she punches her fist. I closed it together in the last video and it peeked out the mic, so I'm not actually going to slap my fist to my hand on this one. Plus, I don't want y'all to run away. Apparently, that's super powerful, even though I'm not a girl, so it may not work the same way. But you had the Guardians of the Galaxy, led by Chris Pratt, white male, from Earth, ironically, and he has to join together with everyone else, and they're barely able to pull it off at the end when everybody joins together again. Growth, teamwork, building up, learning from their issues. He was a solo person that always wanted to be on his own, but then the only way he could be able to defeat Ronan and save the galaxy was joining with all these other ragtag group of people. Just the basis of normal storytelling. So you have these clear examples between her and Tony Stark of, well, here's what happens when a man does something, and here's what happens when a woman does it. When you have an author that's a feminist inserting her wish fulfillment of what she wants to see as a person. That's why Captain Marvel is the ultimate Mary Sue, and why I believe this movie is 100% either allegorical or subtextually about women destroying the patriarchy. Men are bad, women are great. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please like it down below. If you want to argue or debate the points, or if I missed any points, please comment down below. I would definitely try to get around to those and see the comments and respond. If you'd like to support the channel, I'll put a link to my TeePublic page down below. That would be absolutely awesome. And again, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, I will be doing a Captain Marvel versus Alita video coming up shortly in the next few days, as well as I'll do a Captain Marvel versus Wonder Woman, because again, this isn't about hating on women or not wanting women in movies. That's why I did earlier a video with Ray versus the Bride. I'm trying to point out the issues with storytelling so that we can get back to doing good storytelling. That's what I care about. This is what my channel is about. Is I love great storytelling. The hero's journey, the struggles, the overcoming it. That's what connects us. That's what, we love to see. It makes us strive to be better people. I'm tired of this stuff where the girl just closes her eyes and all of a sudden is all powerful. That's just not how it happens. It doesn't happen that way. And so those will be coming up. If you want to subscribe, again, that would be great. Thank you very much for watching. And never forget, you Nerf herders, I love you.